first phase of the Synod and Synodality has ended, I'm sure it will go down in history as the first Synod in which lay people, men and women, have had the right to vote. But it is possible that it will also go down in history as the first Synod in which those who want a change in the doctrine and morals of the Church have been defeated. The members of the Synod who are most faithful to orthodoxy, I'm sure not enthusiastic about the outcome of the conclusions approved yesterday in the Assembly. I'm sure they are content, but not enthusiastic. On the other hand, those who are very disappointed are those who are in favor of this change. The conflicting questions have simply been transferred to the next Synod, which will be the second part of this one, asking that what the study to be trusted to commissions, but commissions integrated and formed by specialists and not by amateurs who vote without knowing well what they are voting for. I believe that this in itself is quite significant, and my conclusion is that the revolution must necessarily wait. It must wait, although it does not mean that in a year's time the revolution will succeed. In the Assembly, at least among the bishops, the vast majority was against changes in dogma and morals. It is not only a question of my impression or my perception. Last night, after a result of the voting was known, I spoke with 3 bishops from very different countries, all 3 conservative, and all 3 agreed on that. It is a synod. The conclusions that were approved, it is a moderate synod, it is a balanced synod, it is not a synod, I insist, that makes the Orthodox enthusiastic, but it is a synod that disappoints those who want changes. One of the bishops, a Polish bishop, told me they wanted to go too fast and we stopped them. I think that sums up very well what happened. And in fact, there is a deep uneasiness among some of those who expected something else, as for example that organization in favor of the integration of homosexuals who exercise their homosexuality in the church and in the priestly ministry, New Ways ministry, whose president has said that he felt bad with the result because it was not what they expected. We must remember that a few days ago during the Synod, the Pope received the founding nun of that group, of that institution, Sister Gramick, who came out of the interview with the Pope saying it was her opinion, what she said, that the Pope was in favor of blessing homosexual couples, and that she hoped that soon there will be even the sacrament of marriage for homosexual couples, and that we would have in a relatively short time not only priestess and bishopess, but also female cardinals, and therefore possible popesses, she said. A great disappointment, as they themselves said last night, as soon as the results of the Synod's conclusions were known. And another proof that they are not happy as the media in general, which have triggered these changes as if they were within reach, have kept huge silence, and it is difficult to find any news about this in the media today. That is to say, little things appear to nothing at all. This began to be seen on the last day, Saturday, and it began to be seen because it was foreseen, it had been announced, that at 3:30 the voting on the final document would begin. But what had happened? What had happened was that the day before, more than 1,200 requests for modifications to the text had been presented, which the Synod cooks had offered to the Synod members for them to study and vote on. More than 1,200 requests for changes, coming almost all cases from groups, that is to say, from the small groups where the work of the Synod had been carried out, not only from individuals, which there were also some, who personally asked for these changes, more than 100, but the groups themselves did not see themselves reflected in the document prepared in the kitchen. They threw the document to the ground. Because let's imagine how in a very short time you're able to make a new document that incorporate those 1,200 requests for change. In short, the vote that was supposed to start at 3:30 started at 7:30. The final press conference was postponed 4 times, and their nervousness was manifest. We did not know why. Those of us who were watching what was happening, because everything was opaque. But we certainly sensed that there had been a rebellion within the hall, and that there had been many who said, "We are not going to accept this because it is not what we have been talking about, what we have been dealing with." Important questions have been postponed for a year until the second and final part of the Synod of Synodality, entrusting them to commissions. For example, the issue of the diaconate ordination of women, apart from the fact that there can be lay diaconate, men and women understood as service, who are in charge of caritas, to give an example, but the diaconate as the first degree of priesthood, the Synod has said that it should be entrusted to a study commission, but there have been already 2. The third one is underway, and as the Pope acknowledged in a book published that same week, the 2 commissions that have already presented their work have recognized that the female diaconate cannot be approved because there is no biblical basis, at least not in the Old, and certainly not in the New Testament for it. So it was a way of saying, well, let it continue studying. Let it continue studying, and within a year, if there is any report, we will talk about this matter. The other star topic, between quotation marks, was the blessing of homosexual couples. How much has been said about this? Not once in the document is the word homosexual or homosexuality mentioned. Not once is the word blessing of couples mentioned. It is not even mentioned. It is said, yes, that a commission must be created to study how to give a better pastoral treatment to people who have different sexual orientations. That is all. It is not even said a sexual orientation different from the one that corresponds to their gender. A different sexual orientation. The word LGBT does not appear either. Therefore, the deepest discomfort of Sister Gramick and her team. Let it be studied. And it is said, in the light of the Word of God, and in the light of tradition, and also in the light of the contributions that science can make at this moment. Another highly conflict topic, the communion of the divorced and remarried. It is not even mentioned. There is nothing. It is said that, citing Amoris Laetitia, the divorced and remarried without having obtained the marriage nullity should be incorporated into the work of the Church. Why can they not be able to read a reading? Or why can they not serve as acolytes? I'm citing examples. Let them be incorporated into the work of the Church. But there's no mention of the possibility that they can receive Holy Communion. Nothing to do with the, well, in case of discernment, the sermon has to be their own, nothing at all. Another conflicting issue, are the up to now consultative bodies going to be deliberative? Are the parish pastoral councils, the diocesan pastoral councils, going to have a deliberative character? That is to say, one man, one vote. And if in that body a lady who is in charge of catechesis and a man who's in charge of liturgy are represented, do they have the same vote as the parish priest, who ipso facto becomes an employee with no other function than to obey what the majority of the laity says? It is not mentioned either. The word deliberative does not appear. It is said that in these councils, which have to be implemented in all parishes, which is obviously excellent, and they have existed in many places for a long time, that these councils an agreement is reached, that listening is encouraged, that an attempt is made to act taking into account the opinions of all. But it's not said that all the deliberative agreements, that is, that they are binding on the person in charge of the parish, or the person in charge of the diocese who is the bishop. In short, they have postponed the important changes entrusting it to commissions, or sometimes not even to that, insisting that there is something that some analysts with whom I commented yesterday the result of the approved conclusions told me that it could be kind of a wake-up call to the Pope, because it is said in the document, it has been approved by almost all, that the cardinals have made more in order to get to know each other, because they come from a very different places and they do not know each other. It is not said with a view to the next conclave, but it is obvious the cardinals have to meet more, and we have to make sure that the cardinals meet more. And why can this be interpreted, as some have done so, as a call to attention to the Pope? Because tradition establishes that every time that there is a consistory, that is to say, appointment of new cardinals, the Pope gathers all the cardinals and dedicates at least one day, at least one, to listen to them. That only happened in the first consistory, and in this last one, the rest of the time has not happened. And the cardinals have complained that they do not know each other, and that they have managed to convince the rest that this is the requested. Well, it is a wake-up call to the Pope, according to some, although in any case slight, to recover a tradition that they consider necessary so that the people can talk to each other and know what one thinks and what another thinks in the view of the possible the election of the successor of the current pontiff when the time comes. Is there satisfaction and enthusiasm among conservatives, among those faithful to orthodoxy? No, but there is a lot of uneasiness among the rest. There is a feeling of having stopped the worst, and of leaving certain burning issues for the next year, for the next course, to be studied, and then we will see, because I insist, the majority of the Synod members, especially the bishops, are not in favor of changes in doctrine or morals. There's still a year to go. Many things can happen in a year. Until next week, God willing.